I don't know what this says about me, but certainly like all the AGI stuff, I'm like, whatever, we'll find out. And then you tell me that we don't need schemas anymore, and then like I feel like sort of itchy.
I had the chance to interview some of my favorite technology investor friends in December of 2022, where we talked about observations, predictions, or hot takes on the tech landscape looking forward in 2023. Each is a mini episode of 5 to 10 minutes. Our next featured guest is James Cham from Bloomberg Beta. We talk about the uncomfortable questions AI causes us to consider, our ability to listen at scale, the founder's journey in AI, and why we should get comfortable with weird. So much fun to catch up with an old friend. I hope you enjoy having a listen in.
I still feel like nothing's been done yet, right? I think that all of the fresh, interesting opportunities to do things, we're all just, it's so early. I think though that the idea that it's important not to dismiss things that are quote unquote just wrappers onto GPT, I think that that's a really, really important point. And it does remind me of what a snotty kid I was growing up. I do very vividly remember realizing that, there's some enterprise software company. And I was like, wait a minute, it's just a bunch of SQL queries on top of Oracle, like it's generating some relatively lame text that's written in a weird way with lots of braces. Like that's not a defensible moat. And yet that is every single enterprise software business. You should spend 15 to 30 minutes a day not playing with ChatGPT, but playing with the playground, because in some ways the playground makes you think not in terms of some whim or some tool that you're using, but the playground forces you to think in terms of something you might actually build, right? And I think that relationship or that way of thinking about how to deal with these models is probably the better, more interesting, richer way to think about it. And you think in terms of maybe a little bit more like programming, right? Which then lends itself a little bit more towards thinking in terms of explicit workflows or services that you might want to offer. The entire world that I've been raised in to think about data structures actually doesn't matter at all. And in some ways, that's one of the more uncomfortable ideas that I've heard. You read that C book, you read K&R, right? Feel smart about yourself because you think in terms of data structures. And then like one of the central points of making it clear you're clever is you think in terms of data structures. And now you're told it doesn't matter. One of the problems we live in right now is that workflows from here to there, or from everything to everything else, just is not very good. All the generative AI stuff that people are excited about and all the large language models, I think a lot of the interesting applications are going to be more like glue and reducing friction between things rather than, whatever, a one-act play between Vladimir Putin and Elon Musk, which is actually the thing that I've had the best results, right? I mean, if you think about the big changes, GPT models became easier for people to access first through an easier version of the playground, and then, of course, through chat. GPT, and all of that then means that a wider range of people are able to play. And then once a wider range of people are able to play, then they get to build. And then I think the other part is you're right that the visual stuff just gets attention and opens your mind in interesting ways. Although I will admit that I think that's probably a much smaller market than the stuff that's available through language communications or text. I do want to figure out ways to listen at scale. Everyone talks about, or understand at scale. Everyone talks in terms of spam opportunities to generate stuff. We've always had those. We've always had the ability to mix and match and generate lots of spam. What these sort of models also give us the chance to do is to listen at scale, right? To take fleeting moments and turn them into something valuable, to take unstructured text and turn it into structured text. Or another way that a friend of mine, David Hammer, put it is to turn flows into stocks. I had a couple conversations with founders who are in the middle of this race with all the generative AI stuff. And, we spent a bunch of time prognosticating and guessing. And then I said, the truth is the only way you're going to find out is by doing, because we are firmly at the stage of the market where there are enough customers who are interested for whom this is accessible and enough ways for you to stub your toe, but also learn dramatically that you kind of just need to run right now and then find out where to turn. And the big think pieces are going to be entertaining and helpful, but not nearly as helpful for a founder as actually just trying things out right now. And that's for better and worse. Feedback loops are so much easier now, right? So there's a little bit of you think about other markets where you're constantly holding out for positive use cases, right? And you're still waiting for 10 years or 15 or 20 years and you still come up with great use cases. the interesting thing here is that the use cases are right around the corner, or they're happening right now. And then you just don't know whether they're going to work well enough, and you kind of just need to find out. And in that way, it's kind of like the web in 1996, and the right strategy in the web in 1996 was to run around as fast as you could, but also to look around and pay enough attention to see what's working, because in all likelihood you're wrong about whatever idea you have. And then if we take that 1996 web analogy seriously, the interesting thing about that is we don't know where the value is going to be created, and we actually don't know how cultural mores are going to change over the next 5 years. There's a way in which early days of the web, you think that you're going to make your money by selling a browser in a box for $50, which we now know is ridiculous. But it didn't seem ridiculous to lots of smart people. And then the other thing that we knew with the web in 1996 was everything was too small. And so everything was stupid and small, and you should shut it down because it's not worth anything. But that was also not true, right? You just had to wait, and you just knew people were going to come. And then the third most uncomfortable thing, that there are a bunch of things that we think will seem either weird or slightly creepy or on the edge that might get totally mainstreamed. So
what would those be?
So I don't know what that looks like in AI, but certainly the first time you saw social networking, it was seen as super scammy and a totally spammy way of getting people to connect. And you'd say, well, that's ridiculous. That'll never really work out. They were right that it would not work out for the first two companies that did it, right? But then everyone else, it totally worked out. And in part it was because then the culture realized that there's just a lot of benefit to being connected with people. And in a similar way that I'm trying to keep an open mind, that there's something that I will see and I'll be like, that's ridiculous. I'll never use that. And I'll be totally wrong, right? And so I'm constantly trying to remind myself of that. And then also critically, I'm constantly trying to remind other founders or VCs that, hey, your understanding of what is a sort of an easy thing or a weird thing, that will change once people realize the utility of something.
Yep. That was so much fun to hear from James on his views on what's ahead. Sign up for my newsletter at curiousdk.com to get upcoming episodes with more predictions from my favorite investor friends.